Ja, die Slides bitte. Thanks.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Sleep remains a mysterious thing, of course. People may be forced to go to sleep even doing very important things like driving or being in a very interesting meeting, but just after lunch going to sleep. Incredible. I try to be so interesting that you won't fall asleep. And after all this introduction on sleep disturbance, one must admit to be more confused than before. I won't try to analyze everything, but just point out some more background things. To put myself in place, I'm more of an end user of the guidance than a constructor of guidance. And after the first slides of this morning, I continued wondering if I was industry or academic. I'm from the Ministry of Environment. Well, probably I fall in the first category. I'm more like someone who uses data and or who misuses data. Okay, we were involved in this process, sort of chain of actions. You have exposure, which gives biological effects and effects on health and well-being, and we're trying to interfere in this chain, which brings me in very simply in deriving guidelines or limit values or whatever, which was written down in this WHO document, and all its simpleness is just a collection of data, evaluation in terms of evidence is reliable data, evaluation in terms of how much effect does it cause with respect to other impacts in the population, and eventually considering measures and sort of cost-benefit analysis, coming to an impact of a ranking of the impact of different guideline values. After that, it's up to the politics to say, well, this looks like a nice value, it doesn't cost too much effect, and on the other hand, it won't cost too much money for the railway companies, for instance, or the house builders. So that's what my usual work is, the deriving guidelines on the basis of evidence. And sometimes the evidence is not perfect, of course, or they have enormous spread. And you have to live with that. Sometimes you have to just act on the basis of imperfect evidence. At this moment I'm involved in writing guidelines for vibrations, for railway vibrations in the Netherlands, and just because of an amendment by Parliament 2 years ago, they just said to the minister, we want a legal regulation for vibrations from railway nodes. And that was because two of these members of Parliament were living near a railway line in the east of the Netherlands, and they were expounding that. Okay, that doesn't matter anymore. Parliament decided, so we started to work and discovering, of course, that this was not so simple as it looked. I didn't think so with my management, of course. My hope here was, of course, to get a fantastic package of all kind of those response relations and all our guidelines, all our guidance to make my guidelines. And of course, I'm prepared to be confronted with some imperfections and spreads and things like that. Which brings me to the choice of indicators, which was not really discussed this morning, and I don't think the guidance will talk much about it, less of course producing those response relations for various indicators. But the question is, how should an indicator for vibrations look like? How should an indicator anyway look like? And these are a range of a few criteria that were used in deriving, for instance, noise indicators for as well the environmental noise directive, the EU directive, as well as the night noise guidelines, which is very simple. An indicator should have a good relationship with effects. Okay, that's normal. But it should also be practical. Easy to calculate or measure using available equipment. It means do not differ too much from the indicators already in use, or otherwise no one will be able to calculate it and you're getting nowhere. Sort of transparency, easy to explain, intuitive, as simple as possible, not more simple than that, of course, and as few as possible, preferably one. Politicians can perhaps handle two. And in the same line, more or less, a certain consistency, not trying to differ from current practices if it's not necessary. And what we saw with deriving the noise indicators was that most indicators correlate so well with each other that it is very difficult to prove that one indicator predicts the effects better than the other one. So validity is usually not a big issue, strangely enough. And that I've seen that for vibration, it looks like it's the same for, at least for the annoyance indicators. So you can choose any, and that most probably you cannot prove that one is better than the other. And then the other factors become more important. Practical applicability, transparency. I would, for instance, expect that a vibration indicator for trains, well, can be different for industries, will at least contain the amount of vibration that one train produces, as well as the number of trains that passing. Because I think, well, it does matter if it only passes one train a week or 10 a night. That should make a difference. However, if you can prove it or not, that would be nice. What we have seen now for sleep, that is all very, I think, very interesting and illuminating even. That behaves very different from what you see for annoyance, and that calls almost immediately for a different indicator. You have different things with different indicators. And one thing, Kirsten didn't mention it more than Mike, but I've seen from the paper that this is all, these laboratory studies, all based on horizontal vibrations. And in the other, for annoyance, or it's not an issue, or usually the vertical component is the important issue. So that is a significant difference, of course, and you cannot get that. Okay, a last point that I wanted to make is interactions. We've seen now for sleep disturbance a very strong interaction with noise, and I was expecting to see that the same for annoyance, but you couldn't prove that probably. So otherwise you'd have said it. I've seen separate studies where you can see an important interaction between noise and vibration, but obviously in the review that it didn't come out. Well, I just made this rapid drawing. This doesn't have any bearings in reality, but that's what I think it could look like in practice. This is, of course, the center of the railway line, and this is the distance. and I would expect that vibration effect falls off rather rapidly with the distance, and noise effect somewhat slower, and then they start to interact, of course. You may imagine some imaginary total. I've seen from a very old paper by Griffin. He even developed a formula to have a total annoyance for noise and vibrations. And in the beginning, the vibrations is the important component for the total. And after some distance, you get that the noise becomes the more important component for your total. And that means, of course, that if you start, and that was mentioned this morning, if you start manipulating one or the other by measures like noise screens, you bring down the noise component and you discover that almost near to the railway nothing changes because the vibration remains important, and the other way around, of course, also. So this is to say, well, the interaction may be very important for your regulation, and in the ideal situation you would have only one regulation for noise and vibration together in one formula, as it were. So if you take measures, you study the influence from the measure on both components and see if then it's active. Okay. I think this is enough to think about for the rest of the afternoon and talk about.